Welcome back, everyone, to the Sales Squad. Glenn here, and me helping you take one big decision today. Should you stay solo or should you build a team? Let's find out. You're running a business and you're wondering, should I stay super lean and mean solo and scale it to how much? 300,000, 500,000, a million per year and stay there, optimize my lifestyle? Or should I add people, freelancers, and then full-time employees? Should I really scale it as a team? What is better? Let's explore both sides. Glenn and I are here to help you. How are you, Glenn?
I'm doing great, Simon. How are you doing?
I'm really curious which one will win. I have some examples of great solopreneur businesses. I Everybody knows examples of big teams that are crushing it. And we know also how terrible both can feel. The overwhelm of being solo and having all these 12 hats on your head at once, but also the bloat of meetings and being in meetings all the time instead of doing actual work and helping actual people. So I'm really curious. Let's start with the solo world.
Yeah, well, I think, solo businesses, people become entrepreneurs and start a business because they want freedom and flexibility, and certainly money. There's this perceived idea that there's great wealth in starting a business. Uh, but I think there's some real positives of being a solo entrepreneur. Like I said, you get total autonomy and independence. You make your own rules. Certainly, there's a consistent vision with one person. That I am the brand, and because there's no one else doing the, filling that function. Uh, and when the organization is simplified to one person, you do have that flexibility. So that means you can pivot, without concern for anyone but yourself. Hey, we're going to move the business to the beach for a month in the summer. Some people do that. You can make a lot quicker decisions. You can turn on a dime. You can literally change your offer overnight. All your processes are streamlined because it's just you managing all the processes. I'd say there's also some cost efficiency there. The overhead only needs to support one person, so the business stays small. That means there's limited risk in that regard, so there's less capital required in this business. Uh, and I'd say whatever to be a one-person shop, you need to be in a field where your talents and skills are marketed and deployed independently. So that means whatever you're doing best in the business that you're in, you kind of need to be the tip of the spear as far as the function that you fill it. Uh, and I'd say it's some examples that I know of are, there's some authors that are solo entrepreneurs. James Clear, that wrote Atomic Habits, has stayed very small. He's a one-man show. Uh, Seth Godin, somebody I think we both like, is a one-man show, and he's been around for a long time and has resisted the temptation to scale up and create an enterprise around himself. I'm sure he has people, uh, and we'll get to that. But those are a couple of examples, and those are fields that it's easy to stay small in. It is just your ideas. Um, However, no solo entrepreneur works in a complete vacuum because all the functions still have to be filled. Sales, marketing, operations, and finance, that has to be done. And unless you stay very, very tiny, you're going to have to rely on some other people. And you'll still have to act as a CEO and a manager and a delegate. Uh, you either do it all yourself or outsource some of those functions to freelancers or another agency or professionals that do what you need done, whether it's legal or accounting, bookkeeping, tax. Uh, but I think you can keep kind of the core of the functions very small, and you delegate and outsource what you need to. Uh, I'd say when all of that is said and done, the rewards just go to you. If you're one person, the direct rewards all go to you, all profits, and you enjoy the fruits of your labor. However, that does mean you eat what you kill, um, and you've got to be aggressive and make all that happen. So, uh, but I think there's a limit. You either make the choice to stay small, uh, or you can kind of you can grow a little bit depending on how much you delegate and how many people you bring into your sphere. I'm here in Austin, Texas. So our famous entrepreneur here, well, we have more than one now, but our famous entrepreneur was always Michael Dell. And he started in his college dorm room making computers. And he was a true solo entrepreneur. And I love the story that he ended up growing and becoming a huge enterprise. And he dropped out of the University of Texas and ended up hiring professors and hiring the dean of the business school. It's a fascinating story. So I don't know. What's your take on? You have any input on solo entrepreneurship?
I saw Michael Dell 5 times today on X, and he was posting Bitcoin, 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 Bitcoin. I don't know what's going on with this guy. He's worth $105 billion. He's posting 7 times a day on X, and 7 of 7 posts are about Bitcoin. There is something going on there. I'm watching it closely. I will keep you posted. But your question, that's interesting, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Maybe that's all he does these days because he has a huge organization and he just kind of sits back somewhere on a yacht somewhere and posts about Bitcoin.
He meets up with people like Elon, with people like Michael Saylor, and they think about future moves. It's fascinating. And it's also fascinating that we live in a time where a little guy like me can, in theory, be one click away from a real-time conversation with this kind of people, with the big players who are actually posting, and it's not their team, it's them. So if you start a conversation there, you are 5 minutes away from a conversation with this guy, which in the world where we come from 20 years ago would be unthinkable. You have to fly there. You have to get through 20 hoops.
Yeah, well, it's certainly Elon Musk that's posting on his social media. We know that for sure.
Definitely, yes. I wish, as a shareholder of Tesla, I wish he would do less of that. But that's a different episode.
Good luck. Good luck with that.
Your question was actually around if I know some solo teams that are doing well. I've been a solo team for most of my life. And I remember with my friends and colleagues who had solo teams, our only consideration was, where's the limit of profit? How much profit can you make per year? Because if you can make it alone, why should you ever have the headache? So we were always discussing, hey, what is your limit this year? And I remember this number. We had a line in the sand. It was around 300K in profits per year. So annual 300K, this was kind of the line in the sand that we all had. And some years we were above it, many years we were below it, but it was kind of, hey, that's the ceiling, that's the limit. And now depending on your lifestyle, that might be absolutely enough, and depending on the country you are in and how many children you have, right? And how much debt you have, that might be just a wonderful lifestyle. So why would you ever want to have the headache of hiring, firing, performance reviews, and all that kindergarten that it can be, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when you bring on people, there's anxiety and stress that goes
Yes.
up as your business grows.
Yes. And at some point, there is a tipping point where it's less stressful because they are carrying now the bulk of the work. But in order to get there, that might be 10 years of white hairs on your head. So we were always discussing this line in the sand number, the 300K number. And I think that number went up meanwhile, because I've asked the AI to tell me some examples of solopreneurs. And those guys, they are doing multi-million dollar businesses. So she said, Mary Forleo, who runs B School, these educational programs for entrepreneurs, she's crushing it. She's doing multiple millions in sales. I don't know exactly the profit rate. And I imagine she has large swaths of like vendors, right? People who do all kinds of single tasks. Let's say a marketing vendor, a content and website vendor, and all this kind of vendors. And later on, we should discuss what is actually less headache, having 10 people on your team that you can rely on, or having all these vendors that sometimes are as hard to handle as your team. And they stay hard. Whereas your team, at some point, there is an inflection point downwards. It's a lot of work in the beginning, but when you have a culture going on, then it's actually less of a headache. So the AI said, Mary Forleo, then Pat Flynn. I mean, Pat Flynn was one of my heroes, the passive income guy, right? He was one of the reasons why I fell in love with YouTube and with podcasting. Tim Ferriss and Pat Flynn were my heroes who sparked my imagination on what's possible as a creator. And he makes, according to AI, 100K a month with online courses, affiliate partnerships, etc. I guess it's more. Then we have Lewis Howes, also former athlete turned lifestyle entrepreneur with this huge podcast. Ramit Sethi. Ramit is one of the guys that I read every email he sends, and he's really, really solid. I loved his recent Netflix series, and I watched it. It's really cool. I Will Teach You to Be Rich. It was a great, I think, a great title for a book. I didn't read the book, but I'm reading all the emails, so I think I know most of what's in there. I love Ramit. He started as a solopreneur. I'm not sure if you can count him as a solopreneur right now. He might have a proper team. The AI doesn't know that much, I think, about what's going on behind the scenes.
Sure.
But he's a great example because loves what he's doing, then writes a book. It becomes a method. Method becomes a movie, and it's the sky's the limit from there when you're on Netflix. Right now you can scale it, you can license it. I'm not sure he's licensing yet, but I guess that's the next thing. Like Netflix is a form of licensing where you basically have other people pay to use for your IP. So he's crushing it, and I don't see a limit in how many millions he can do from there, because he doesn't have to deliver anything. It's courses. Courses are build it once, sell it forever. So highly scalable. Books, highly scalable. And I don't think he has any services anymore. Services might be the one thing that's your bottleneck. That 300,000 line was because we were all doing the service. We were doing the client work.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Simon. If your business is your labor, you're limited to how much you're willing to work in a year. Versus if you are creating content or something that's scalable, where you create it and then it sells a million times. That's where you can, I think, do well as a solo entrepreneur, like you just mentioned.
Totally. We have worked with an organization that was built by just one person, really, really in love with what he was doing. It became a method. He hated adding people. So we had to find another way of scaling it. And we found a way after a couple of years. And now it's a very known brand and it's scaled across the globe. And he did it just with IP landing and with a form of certification. So other people are now the teachers and trainers. And each of those is now basically a business owner and runs a country. And he has now enough countries and he's enjoying his life now. the the question is, do you want that headache, right? But still, one more person who as a solopreneur is crushing it, Marie Kondo, right? Can I condo your life? Keep only what's giving you joy right now and get rid of the rest. And she
Hmm.
does it. And it's a method now. She could easily teach, train, certify, and get people going in that, and everybody could run a country. Marie Kondoing apartments,
Hmm.
right? Or even businesses. Probably she could build an extension to how you Marie Kondo your business. Um, those are examples that came to mind of great solopreneurs, and definitely Seth Godin is still out there and he's still crushing it. And there are no signs of burnout or no signs of boredom with Seth. He has a great life and a very successful business. Why would
Yeah.
he need to add a team? But later on, we will double click into, okay, if you don't have a team, but who runs all these operations?
Yep. All right. Well, what about teams? You're gonna champion the teams approach.
The dream of having a team is building a culture that scales. Um, I just recently became a shareholder in KKR because I saw 15 of their partners at their 5 hours long investor day. And I saw that all 15 had the same culture. Pair that with doubling revenues every 4 years. I was in love with that company. How can I be part of this company? I want to own a part of this company. Because when you see that, you see 15 times the fire of a culture that's on, right? 15 people on fire, they have 15 people each. You see where this is going, right? Fire begets fire. And the only thing is, can you keep it simple? One balance sheet, one incentive system, one spirit, one set of mechanics, of
Hmm.
values that apply. And so that's what I look for, because it can get bloated and then it becomes General Electric. But it didn't. It didn't. So KKR is growing, but staying very aligned, very simple. So this is for me the dream, right, of a mature business, highly scalable, where culture scales across continents. So what they did in the US, they now did in Japan, and they can scale it across the next Asian countries. And those are emerging markets, so they can easily double from there again. Or think of Zappos, Salesforce, Patagonia. I mean, these companies have a culture
Hmm.
that is tangible, right? You can feel that culture when you interact with them. That's a superpower. In addition to the product or service, it's a superpower to have a culture that's healthy and it's impactful. But people listening here are not yet Patagonia. So let's start where we are. We are solopreneurs. The question right now is, do I have enough reason to add people? Now let's go with the opposite. What's the minimum that you can add? Let's start with software. There's amazing software. Let's add 0 people. If you add 0 people, there's amazing software. Zapier, Slack, Make, Etio, Attention. Just the first that come to my mind, right?
Hmm.
Google Cloud and everything Google Workspace. That can take, if you create enough automations, you can trigger processes, and they can do things where 5 years ago you would have needed 3 people to do a task. Now you can automate that task. So software, I think, is the low-hanging fruit. Add software to your life before you add people. And the first step for me is writing down all the processes in Notion. I like Notion because it's simple and visual. And The first step is write down the processes, and then first step, identify a task to delegate to a software. You do this for a couple of weeks, for a couple of months. At some point, you run out of things that you can give to a software. Now let's think of freelancers. Because
Okay, so we've got bots before people. That's our first premise,
100%,
right?
100%.
Okay.
Because if you're a solopreneur, you have to be very aware of your cash flow. The number one risk is just not being able to pay the bill on Friday.
Absolutely.
So cash flow first. That's why we really recommend being in a high margin, high ticket business, because that gives you the leeway, the freedom, the maneuverability, so that every Friday you can pay everything that comes in. That's the most important thing. The lower your margin, the more you're at risk. Go for high ticket first. If you can't, go software. If you can't, go hardware. But that's the level of difficulty that you're building into your life. Right? So easiest, high ticket services. Because you have 90% profit margins, you can pay everything that comes on every Friday for the next 10 years, just from your clients.
Yeah.
And so when you're there, yes, software first. Because it's cheaper. And it's less risky, and it's also more reliable. It doesn't go on holidays for a month. It never gets sick.
Doesn't get cranky. Correct.
Yeah, you doesn't have any moods. It's the most reliable. At some point, we need people, and let's think of freelancers. Freelancers, yes, when you're still trying to find out how something works, or if it's a one-off, yeah, go to Fiverr, get them for one task. Task is done. Thank you. Bye. But as soon as it becomes a repeatable thing, you might want to start adding people to your team now. And you have tried it out yourself. You have worked with it with one-off helpers. Now it's time you try to really let people in. Take the first little bit of risk. Get some people in. And some of those, they will stay forever. And this is how you should manage it. Because it's really an investment into relationship. Can I trust you? Can you trust me? Are we good for each other? Are we really amplifying each other's potential? A few of them will be that kind of relationship. Warren Buffett.
Now, are these employees, or are these still? We're still talking about freelancers and outsourcing.
You start with a freelance contract with just a few tasks. For example, Michelle and I, our history 5 years ago, she was a VA for one specific task. Help me follow up on LinkedIn with the people who want to talk to me. One task. Probably 10 hours a week or something. And then over years, we got better and better as a team. We got more reliable. And then we said, okay, this is a 15 years thing. Let's never stop this. And I think this is how I would approach these kind of decisions, because this is now long-term relationships where you invest a lot in the beginning from both sides, but the compound effect over years is what makes it special. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger were such an example. They found each other, they became partners, and they made each other stronger for forever. Warren Buffett started making serious money after his 50th birthday. Not many people know this. But he was working all the time since his 20s, but he started making money in his 50s, because this is where the compounding effect starts to kick in. And one of the reasons he could endure that was having a partner like Charlie Munger that he could rely on. And Charlie was asked, how did you become partner of Warren Buffett? How did you do this? And he said, I did it by being a great partner. So you are a great partner, you cultivate great partners. This is how I would think that relationship. Test a ton of freelancers for just a couple tasks. Some of them will automatically invest in you and you in them more. Those will be the snowballs that you keep forever. Just by natural elimination, the others will come and go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would not, if I'm a solopreneur, hire a 150K role, full risk, not knowing these people. I would never do that. Unless I have worked with them for many years, project-based, and I know them in a hard day, in an easy day, in an up market, in a down market, in a turnaround, in a scaling situation.
Yeah.
Well, then yes, I can trust them and enough. But you usually don't when you hire. So that will be my route. Little snowballs, and some of them become big snowballs.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that we have to address is, what's more headache? Having, let's say you are Marie Forleo. Would it be less stressful to have 10 people on your team, and they cost you a lot per month, but you can relax a bit? Or having 10 vendors that maybe cost the same
Sure.
and maybe are harder to run actually and to manage? I'm not completely sure, and probably this is where every listener, you can give us your comments and your ideas and your experiences. I'm actually curious. I'm hearing mixed signals when I talk to entrepreneurs. Some people say, yeah, I have just 5 agencies working for me, but it's actually painful and it's not working.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a vendor is easier to replace, from a legal standpoint. But whether you're replacing an employee or a vendor, they still have to get up to speed and know your operations and know what you need and to become really effective. So um, whatever function they're filling, it's still an issue. So
And because they are easier to replace, they are usually also less loyal and less dedicated. But it really depends on the type of contract. So let's talk about the types of contracts that you can have with a vendor. If you pay them for time and they have 5 other clients, that's, I think, the worst possible contract for both of you guys. They are not really incentivized for you to win. They just see you as a guy, you pay me 10, I make 10, you pay 15, I make 15.
mhm.
That's a terrible agreement. Those are usually the agency agreement, vendor agreements, where both sides are unhappy long term. I have always been unhappy short term. Already after 2-3 months, we were arguing. Then there is second type of agreement, which is, hey, let's align the incentives here. You win when I win. We are partners in this. We split the risk. We split the profits. Those things are very, very hard to find. It's only 0.1% of the vendors out there that have enough confidence in their entrepreneurial skills, in their delivery skills, in their execution, that will even consider talking to you a second round about this. Most will go, oh, no. You either pay 20 hours or 40 hours. That's my 2 options.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you are lucky enough to stay on course and to still look for this other partnership, you might find that 0.1% that says, okay, let's talk about the specifics. Who is doing what here? And how much percentage of the profit? How do we split the profits? How do we split the risk? Ideally 50-50, 50-50, or something similar.
Wow. Okay, you're talking about splitting profits with a vendor.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the holy grail. This is as good as having a full-time employee. Maybe even better, because you don't have all this insurance stuff and all this
True
HR
enough.
stuff around it.
Yes.
In some countries, it can kill you. And we have 24 countries listening, so let's not go into the country specifics. Generally, the holy grail is splitting the risk, splitting the profits. Ideally 50-50, really a partnership, an eye-level business partnership, eye to eye, right? We carry the risk, we carry the profits. And it's hard to get it started. But if you get that started, this is now probably the best business partnership that you can have. And it's like co-founding. This is like having a real partner in crime. So those partnerships, I see them only 0.1% of the times when I talk to people. But when I see them, wow, those are things that will work for the next 10 years, 15 years. Because you have two entities who can do it alone, but it's like 10%, 20% better for them to do it together. This is the best marriage. Think of a marriage. If I marry somebody just because I am in need, how happy are we gonna be? But if I can love myself and am fine alone, and she can love herself and is fine alone, but together we are having even more fun, that's the best foundation for a long-term marriage.
Mm-hmm. You know, to me, like, I agree. You don't see that very often, but I think you see it when people are starting businesses and they don't have the cash. Well, I can pay you in another way. Uh, and granted, there's no track record with that relationship. It's starting fresh, but hey, would you work for a piece of equity? That kind of thing.
Equity is harder because now you are deferring the actual partnership into a future, which is unknown.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bit harder. I don't do that so much anymore, because and we could go into that, but that's probably a full episode. Equity sharing, because you need due diligence, you need you need to look at three things that are really key, and that might complicate the relationship. Better if you directly share this week's profits. Every Friday, what did we contribute? What's the profit? Split, and then it automatically Stripe, or we have an outsourced finance team. They automatically every Friday dispatch the profits. You can have a software do that.
Yeah.
We are old school. We still have people doing it, but you can have a software doing that. Definitely. And then it's no emotions, just, okay, this is my contribution. This is the profit. Every Friday it lands on your account. I think this is the best because it has these short-term loops. And it's much easier to do than, I think and I hope that in 7 years this is going to be anything. It's very hard to keep that up.
Yeah, true enough.
So that's the vendor agreement that I see working really well. I'll give you an example. You can hire a PR agent and say, okay, for 10 hours a week, you get this amount, you get $3,000, and for 20 hours a week, $5,000. Or you can say, look, I want to land Inc. magazine, and that's worth to me $6,000 when you land it. I want to land the New York Times, that's worth to me $44,000. And I want to land the Joe Rogan podcast, and that is worth to me $35,000 if you land me there.
Okay.
Now we are talking partnership. They will not report on inputs. I did this amount of hours. Who cares? Nobody cares about the inputs, right? It's an outcomes game. You got me on the Joe Rogan show. I'm happy to send over $33,000 right now. You have skin in the game. Uh, what's this book? It's called Skin in the Game by Nassim Taleb. And it's a
Hmm.
really good book on how to distribute risk and how to manage risk as an entrepreneur. Always go for 50-50. Never carry all the risk or have other people carry all the risk. Look for 50-50 risk distribution, profit risk distribution. He shows it from a mathematical perspective, why it's the best option. I'm not that mathematical. I'm more of a people's guy. I look at relationship quality and long-term relationships because that's what sales is about, right? It's about really building solid relationships that are 15 years, 20 years long.
Hmm.
So I look at that, and if you split the risk and if you share the profits, what's a better psychological contract between two people? It's the most aligned incentive situation that you can get into. And then, doesn't matter if it's a vendor or if it's a colleague, it's basically the same. We are in this together. We are both aligned. I want you to win. You want me to win. Whoever wins, wins. And we both win when one wins.
Yep.
So the jury is out there on what's actually less headache, building 10 people or working with 5 vendors. I would love to hear some experiences from you guys. Let us know in the comments, because I'm not totally sure, but I'm curious. Uh, Definitely one trend is I think one person can make more than 300K meanwhile because of technology, because of software, because of AI. And the second is look at the quality of your psychological contracts, your legal contracts, which is the same in the end,
Hmm.
more than the question, is this a full-time employee or a contract employee? I think the quality of the incentives and the psychological contract is primary in this consideration.
Yeah, and I don't think that's too dissimilar from how you manage employees as well, how they're incentivized. So
Yes. Yes. I think it's actually the same, right? So going back to the KKR example, why invested into KKR? They are asset managers and they are a firm. Now you have a conflict of interest here. When I'm an asset manager, do I optimize for my assets to perform best or for the firm to win? Two different goals.
hmm.
And so they had this conundrum of building an incentive system that's good for the firm. I expect the asset management side to perform very well. Otherwise, you will lose clients. But winning clients alone is not enough. The whole firm needs to be stronger after each of your weeks here. So they found a way, and I think this is the hardest thing to do with all teams. It's 22 years that I'm trying to find these mechanisms with teams on how you align incentives and goals and find the right metrics and the right goals. It's hard. They have found a way. They pay each other for contribution to the firm's results, not to the single asset performance, or if you want, the parts of the firm. Only total firm results. The larger you get, the harder this is to make. This why I take this huge example. If you are 3 people, now that's what you just said. How do we find a way that everybody has the same incentive to win? And everybody can be part of the winning, both carrying some of the risk and also getting some of the profits.
Yeah, that brings up the idea is the difference between the business owner and the employees, right? The employees, their risk is my paycheck at the end of the week. and the business owner has a lot more risks. They're carrying the entire business on their back. So it is a different relationship, than what you're proposing with vendors. Yeah.
Yes.
Because you
And
can't, you can never do away with that idea that the business owner owns the business and carries all the risk, and the employee doesn't have the risk. And so I think that is a big difference between having a team of outsourced freelancers or professionals versus a team of employees, and that can't go away.
yeah. And the question is it set in stone, or can we find creative ways of aligning more everyone? So think
Sure.
of, for example, I'm constantly seeing sales teams, right? And I'm constantly asked, Simon, should I pay a setter, a closer? How should I pay them? How much is per outcome? How much is per time? And so we're constantly refining those contracts with setters, for example. And setters, so that's an appointment setter, somebody who sets an appointment for you. Appointment setters, you can pay 100% commission based. Now you have these partnerships. Both have risk, both have profits. You will have a higher turnover. It will be harder to even find them and onboard them, because most of them will say, no, thanks, I'm looking for a job. I'm not looking for a partnership.
Yeah.
Just pay me per hour. And then we say, bye-bye. We're looking for entrepreneurial people. And when you find them, it's harder to find, but when you find them, now they can make more money than the CEO and the owner per week. So if you can cut the percentage of the profits in a way that is almost 50-50, that's a wonderful agreement. And so people can jump into a team right now, make 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 a month in the first week, and then being very, very motivated to stay around long and are fully entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, they have the risk, because in sales, you can have a week where you sell nothing. That's pretty common.
Yeah.
So they also have some of the risk. But in the setter's case, it's not tied to selling. It's just tied to getting an appointment and that person to show up. So it's really in your control. And that's never the case that you have 0 appointments. If you are a good setter, you always have some appointments. So that is maybe the example that comes to my mind that is most 50-50. Where, okay, the appointment setter doesn't own shares of the company, but of most companies, you don't want to own share of anyways. Most companies are not Google and Amazon, where you go, please give me shares.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. Yeah, a minority share of a private business is worth 0. Yeah.
I mean, I'm quite picky with the shares that I want to own. But if I can have an agreement with somebody where we carry the risk, we go entrepreneurial, and then when we win, we both win in terms of profits paid out on Friday, that's the most motivating agreement that I can think of. And so probably in the sales team, it's the easiest to implement. That's why I love being in sales teams, because they're the most entrepreneurial and where you have the most, partnership kind of agreements together.
Yeah.
It's obviously harder. You cannot do that with your executive assistant. You have to just have a traditional employee contract with her or him. And you cannot do that with many roles that are just internal and building product, for example. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that with developers. But you can do that in the sales team. This is where I hang out most and am refining those contracts every day with people. I would be curious if you can do this also in other departments, finding really 50-50 kind of contracts.
A fully commission-based enterprise. That's interesting. Interesting idea. If you could
It's an interesting idea. We
take that
said
all the way through
Zappos.
operations. And,
Yeah,
yeah.
we said Zappos. I remember when friends of mine were consulting Zappos on how to turn it into a fully, bottoms up organization. And it was kind of the flagship for a while on how you can do that. And it wasn't easy to keep it up. But for a while, they had this spirit. We all own this. We all are obsessed about the client because we all own this. We are all owners, psychological owners, and share owners of the company. So we derailed the conversation a little bit to the more incentive side of things and contractual side of things, because I think it matters in this context.
It is. That dictates how you scale and your ability to scale. But let's keep going.
The only sure thing is you can't wear 17 hats on your head all the time and be happy. You will be miserable. That's clear. The only question is, where do you put these hats? Do you put them on software and freelancers and internal, or do you put them on 3 agencies, 5 vendors? What is actually the least hassle? I would love to hear this from you all, guys.
Yeah, because you still have to act as a delegator. You still have to act as a manager. You if you're going to go beyond just billing for your own time and creating even a small solopreneur venture, you're still going to have some people helping you.
So this was Should I Go Solo or Team? Guys, next week we're back here with paid growth versus organic growth. Some people say you have to spend money to make money. Really? We will find out if that's a myth or if it's actually fact and physics. Let's find out, because we will have also the other side. No. You can go organic, low risk, and create flywheels of organic growth that bit by bit, flywheel after flywheel, actually scales in a more de-risked way, because you are not allocating so much capital to it. You are running more lean experiments bit by bit and only putting jet fuel on what already works. So let's find out next week, paid growth or organic growth. And thank you, everybody. See you next week. Thanks, Glenn. Keep rolling.
See you, Simon.